up guys, Josh from Xtreme Truck and Auto. Today we're working on an 07 Tacoma. We're going to be putting a bull bar on the front of it with a set of pod lights and then what's called a pop and lock. It's an electronic tailgate lock in the back of this thing. So stick around and we'll go ahead and jump on into the install. So what I'm going to start with is, if you notice this wire here, is we're going to be running inside the cab. Now I went ahead and I take a knife and very carefully cut the boot for the main wiring harness that goes through the firewall. I love running wires through that boot. I'm not sure if you can see it back there. Follow this white pipe, but that just gives a good easy access into the cab and keeps you from having an area that is going to strip the wiring or cut the wiring, anything like that. But let's get a view up under here. You can see that tube coming through. You can use like water line for houses. I get these out of Retracts. I love them for wiring. It makes life really simple. But essentially we're just going to pull our wire through. Now similar to this switch is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to need to pop that little thing out and then we'll install a switch into it. I'll show you how that's done. Got the wire through. I just need to run it up to here, pop that out, put the switch in, and we'll be good to go. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to use, if I can, a little screwdriver to pop this out, or if I need to get back behind it, I will through here and we'll pop it out. So let me get that out and I'll show you how we're going to install the switch into that. So the way I was able to pop this switch out was I took off the little drawer fuse thing and then I pushed this switch through. But if you look, we have wiring going into the back of this. Now some of these blanks will hold the wiring for whatever switch is supposed to be there, whether it came with the option or not. Sometimes vehicles will have the wiring. So all I'm going to do is disconnect that, tuck that back in, and then we're going to use this switch blank. Over here at our vise, we've got our switch blank. Now the way I like to make sure I hit the center is, actually Toyota does a nice little thing, is I'm going to find a drill bit that's the same size as that, and I'm going to punch through the middle of that because that's dead center, so that way I know it's straight. And then we'll flip it over and do a step bit up to, I believe it's 3/4, which will just barely fit. There will have to be some modification on the side of this that I'll show you. But yeah, you can get switches installed into these blanks if you want to go that route, or I know on Amazon you can buy switches that replace these. So whatever you choose to do is your decision. I like you adding switches to these because it's no extra charge really for the customer. Switches are cheap, easy to come by. I have run into issues where the Amazon ones that replace this kind of get caught and I've had to file around the edges just a little bit, so keep that in mind. All right, got our little blank drilled out, so as you can see it just barely fits for one of those switches. Now what I'm going to do, as you can tell where the step bit kind of ate through the side because of how wide it is I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to run it down those two lines, same thing on the other side. That'll open it up and actually allow me to get the wires onto the switch a little bit easier. So let me get this done and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. Here's what the switch basically looks like installed into that panel, or the little blank. As you can see, we got access to the pins, the little blades that we need to hook up the wiring. So my next step on this thing is I'm going to route the wire that is up under the vehicle's dash to this little hole. We're going to make sure it's tucked up, zip tied, out of our way, and then we're going to connect up this switch and we'll pretty much be done inside the cab. So we've got all of our wiring running from our switch inside. That works. I'll show you the switch at the end when we go to turn everything on. But one thing I'm going to do, even though I think it's a little overkill, I like to use them anyways, just it's an extra little precaution I guess, is I'm going to go ahead and install a relay, even though that these lights are going to be pulling just over 5 amps, somewhere around 5.5. What the relay basically does is, instead of the power coming from the battery through the switch and then going to the lights where amperage draw can cause a problem with switches, I know the switch inside is rated for 20 amps. Like I said, they're coming here to get it professionally installed, so I'm gonna do it overkill. First thing we're gonna need is the wire from here. We need to figure out what wires we're gonna use with what. Now, this is a 14-4 wire. What that means is we have 14 gauge wires and 4 of them inside. Hence you see the 4 different colors. I am not gonna use the white wire because it's not needed. So what I'll do is when I strip off this outer casing, I'll cut the white one down so that way it's just tucked in there and out of the way. The ones we are going to use are red, green, and black. Now, when it comes to my wiring, I am OCD and I like to keep everything the same. So the red is going to be the 12 volt to the switch, the black is going to be the ground to the switch, and then the green is going to be the 12 volt that runs from the switch and is going to go to this relay. So let's talk about relays for a second. As you can see, this is a 4-pin relay. Some will have a 5th pin. 87A, I never ever use relays with the 5th pin, so I'm going to go ahead and cross that off. So first thing is we're going to be looking at the relay like this. You see the pins, and then also if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's little numbers written by each of these pins that correspond. So you got 30, 86, 87, and 85. So what we're looking at is we have 87 and 30, and what these are is 12 volt from the battery to your pod lights. These are interchangeable. You can switch 87 and 30, doesn't matter which one's where. It does matter, however, if you do have a 5th pin, but we're not worried about that today. So 87 and 30 are interchangeable, just as long as you're going 12 volt from the battery, 12 volt to whatever you're doing. Now the 12 volt coming from the battery, you will want to fuse. So we're going to do that with our 7.5 amp fuse. The 86 and 85 are also interchangeable, so you can swap them. It doesn't matter. One needs to be a ground source. The other one needs to be a 12 volt source. Now you can use a switch to break ground from the relay, or you can use the switch in our case and have 12 volt coming from that switch. So this will be constant ground, and then it'll only receive 12 volt when the switch is on. So I got it wired in roughly. I am gonna clean this up, but to show you guys essentially what's going on with the relay is right here, the front one right here, that's on the opposite side of this is my 12 volt from the battery. That's why that's red. This one is the green coming from the switch, and then I have white as the ground. All I did was swing it down, bring it back up, and then when I mount this relay, it's going to ground out behind it. And then the wire that I taped the ground to, just to help me kind of keep everything organized, is the loose end, and this is going to go to the pod lights. So I got everything buttoned up. Keep in mind the yellow and the red are not for me. This black one is. We just need to zip tie and secure that into position. But as you can see, we've got it all loomed up except for this one wire, which is the wire going to the pod lights. That's going to supply power to that through the relay. But we're going to come in here. As you can see, the light's on. That's good. And yeah, it seems to be working. Now, one thing you can do to make sure you've wired up your relay right is listen for a click. I'm going to flip the mic around and set it right by this relay, and then go turn it on and off, the switch on and off, so you can hear that relay click. So as you can tell by the clicking of that relay, we are at least triggering the relay properly. We won't know in 12 volt. You can always test here, but I know I have that wired right. I'll show you once when we get the lights hooked up that they kick on. But the next step in our process of this Toyota is we are going to install the bull bar. I like the way Toyota does their bumper, actual bumper, not the fascia, because it's 4 14 millimeter nuts per side, and it makes mounting bull bars and bumpers typically very simple on these Toyotas. Now, I haven't opened up the bull bar exactly to see how they mount, but I'm betting it's going to use at least 3, if not all 4 of those nuts and mounting studs. All right, so we're crawling up under here. So the way these mount is actually a little bit different than what I was thinking. We're going to use these 2 nuts. I'm not sure if you can see them. 1, 2, and then we'll have a bolt that'll go through here and we'll mount the rest of the bracket. So I'm gonna get this on and I'll show you guys what the heck I'm talking about. So here's how the bull bar bracket's gonna mount. You've got your bolt that goes through the frame portion of it. You got a little spacer because if you look, you got a little aluminum, so you gotta space it out so that way this can sit flush. And then you've got your 2 nuts up here. Now, if you notice, I did have to make some modification. This vehicle, I'm not sure if you can see it, but right up in there is cracked on the aluminum welds, which tells me that it was in some sort of front end collision, making this fit a little bit weird, but I think we've got it. Now on the back side, you'll have another big washer, smaller washer, lock washer, and nut. Now, one thing I do want you to keep in mind is I do leave these loose. What that allows me to do is to mount the bull bar onto these easily. And then we'll go back through and kind of tighten everything up, level everything out, and make it look nice for the customer. So as you can see, we've got our bull bar on and nice and straight. It's not going anywhere. The next step we need to do to get access to where we can bolt the lights down on these little holes that are plugged up is I need to remove this. Now there is 5 4mm Allens. I went ahead and already removed 3 of them. Those 3 are 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 1 here and 1 here, and this plate will come off. I'm gonna get that pulled off, and then we're going to mount the lights. I'll just fish the nut up into here, and then it'll sit on top of the bull bar, kind of where you see my hand, right up here. So as you can tell, we got our lights mounted. I got the, I guess the skid plate portion of the bull bar put back on. Now, one thing I do want to make mention of is you'll see that it's offset into a hole. Now, getting the washer and nut could be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So tech tip of the day is if you shove some plastic down in your deep well socket, it'll hold the nut up high enough that you can get the thread started. And then if you use a little bit of grease around the edge of the socket, you'll be able to stick your washer on there and it's not gonna slide off if you need to make a little bit of an adjustment. So just keep that in mind when you guys go to put any sort of nut or washer up into here to mount these lights. But next step is I've got some 14.2 wire, same thing as the 14.4, only it's just got red and black. 14.2. We're gonna run up, and then there's an AC or transmission line that will come across behind kind of this portion. Same thing with that one. And then when we get up to like right around the headlight or somewhere up in here, we'll combine the 2 and then come back, attach the red, the power portion, to this green wire, which is coming off my relay here, and then we'll ground either at the battery or right here on this body ground. We got our lights all hooked up, ready to go. Let's hit the switch, make sure we're working. And we are. Sweet. So there's that. Good to go. Final step, we're going to be moving to the back and we're going to be installing a pop and lock powered tailgate lock. All right, so on the pop and lock, first thing you do is remove all the T30s. There's probably 12 or more. You've got across here and then across the bottom there and 2 in the middle. Next thing I did was I went ahead and inserted the wiring for the pop and lock. Now I go through this little drain hole here. The easiest way to do that, because of these barrel connectors, is just to cut and then crimp the wire. I'm going to cover this up with electrical tape and also a little bit of tubing. That way it is protected. So I'm going to lay that off out of my way. My next step is we got to undo these plastic clips, and just on the driver's side, this one alone, I got to reach up in here and hopefully not break this. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this end of the rod, put it down here, this end over here. I'm gonna set down the camera to do this so I don't break these little clips. And then when I get that in position, I'll bring you guys back in and show you. We're gonna go ahead and disconnect this one as well, if it'll come, and lift it up. Cool. So there's that. Let me get this flipped around and I'll bring you guys back in. So as you can see, we've got this flipped around. Next order of business is we got to remove these 2 tins and pull this handle out of place. We'll be shoving this new pop and lock one into its position. This is cool because it comes with a bolt lock, which is a coatable key for here, so you can use your key or the power locks. But yep, 10 mils, the handle will come out. Now it does take a little bit of finagling to get it out, so be careful not to scratch the face of the tailgate. And then the other thing is when you guys are pushing this wire through, I forgot to mention this, be careful, because sometimes you may need to take a screwdriver or something and pry up carefully just to open this up a little bit further. And if you do that, you don't want to put it up against the face of the tailgate and pry, because you can create dents and stuff like that. That's not a good situation. Got it all mounted. It's basically those 2 10 mils, a little bit of wiggling to get the old one out, the new one in, and then when you have the handle in place, you basically slide this mechanism under, and you make sure that this lock piece goes right in there, because when this actuator works, it's going to do that and that. That's how it's going to unlock and lock. So we got our wiring run out and through the hole there. The last thing I want to do is make sure that this tailgate's working before I put everything back together. So we'll slide and grab everything I can. We'll go up, we'll close, we'll open. Sweet. So now that we got that, I want to grab these keys. I'm gonna come here. You want to make sure you use the actual key, not the gray one. You want the black one, because the gray one is a valet key and you only get one chance at coding this. What you want to do is push it all the way in and then twist to the right until it stops, and then to the left, and then it pulls out, and that's how you code this. Super straightforward, easy. Make sure you know you're getting lock, unlock, all that good stuff. We're unlocked. We're locked. Straightforward. And then if you have a backup camera, it does have a little thing that you can pop out, and then there's 2 10mm bolts that you'll unbolt the camera off the factory handle, and you'll just install it here. It's super simple, straightforward. But I'm gonna get the back of this thrown together and the wires run all the way over to the kick panel, and then that's where we're gonna pull the lock and unlock signal. Alrighty. So the way I routed the wire was just under the vehicle along the frame rail, and then there's a little rubber grommet. I just cut a little hole and ran the wire up through. And then there's these 2 harnesses in the kick panel, are right next to where the door opens and closes. And the one you're looking for, at least on this truck, has green tape and then a barcode. And inside the world of mini wires of this harness, on this particular truck, which was built on, where'd it go? There it is, 9 of 06. Where I found the signal for lock and unlock was a blue wire and a blue with pink, blue with red, whatever you want to call it. They were just kind of right on top. So those are the 2 wires that I have it connected into. The green wire goes to the blue with red. The blue wire goes to the blue wire. Easy enough to remember. If for whatever reason you hook these up backwards, you can always go back to the pop and lock where it plugs into the actuator, and you can swap those. So you don't have to worry too much about your wiring up here. So now I'm just gonna close this for now to show you guys how this thing works. We shut the tailgate, we hit lock. You can hear it. It's locked. I can't get it open. If we hit unlock and again, it opens. So that's it when it comes to a pop and lock. They are fairly easy. The hardest part is either getting the handle into the tailgate or finding these 2 wires. I'm gonna get everything thrown back together and then we will do our final whatever. So that's it when it comes to the install of the bull bar, lights, and pop and lock on this Tacoma. Like I always say, if you guys have any questions, drop it down in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed. Once again, if you guys are local to us and you are subscribed to the channel, that's good enough for 5% off up to $100. But like always, I'll catch you on the next one.